This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Tzadi Tes, and we're holding on the bottom of Tzadi Ches Amid Beis, of the probably not famous, but should be famous Daf Min Shas, as we deal with all the different kelim of the Beis Hamikdash, kelim of the Mishkan. So we pick it up on Tzadi Ches Amid Beis. We are 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Reb Nos, says Reb Nos, Mikan Shem Soy Mishubach. So we're middle of discussing the menorah, and we have 2 different shitos in the way that it is placed. Is it parallel with the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or is it perpendicular? The problem with it being perpendicular, the parallel, says the Gemara, is then how is the Ner Emsai at any level elevated, at any level greater? It would seem that it's not any more Pnei Kodesh HaKadosh than anything else. Where's the Mul Pnei HaMenorah? So the Gemara answered. The Gemara answered, as you can see really in Rashi's picture, and as we saw a beautiful picture yesterday, that says the Gemara, and actually we can pull up the picture right now, says the Gemara that according to Rav Shimon, the Ner Maravi wick goes towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And that's how we fulfill El Mul Pnei HaMenorah. So says the Gemara today, Bishlam Laman Damar Mizrachu Ma'ira Vainu Davi Yisivi Asara Be'asrim. Says the Gemara. So first of all, Ram Nassan says, Mikan Shem Say Mishubach, that's how we see the middle one is praiseworthy. But now says the Gemara, a bunch of kassers on Rav Loz, Rav Shimon, that the Gemara assumes that if the Shulchan was placed north to south, so we assume that the Shulchanois of Shlomo HaMelech, the 10 of them, were the same. So says the Gemara, according to Rebbe, that they're east to west. I understand how 10 Shulchanois can be within 20 Amois of the Kodesh. Ella, but according to Rav Shimon, if they're all going this way, then how in the world could 20 of the Shulchanos, 10 of the Shulchanos, be in precisely 20 Amos? You're going to run out of space. Says the Gemara, Visu, and furthermore, Visu and Gaja number 2 out of the Kanim pass through. If their mom is total leg, one shulchan right behind the next one, so how do the Kayanim walk? Visu, and furthermore, it comes out that 5 shulchanos are going to be in the Daraim, in the south, because it's going to go all the way Meisafa and all the way back. So now they're going to end up in the Daraim, which is not allowed. Where's the Shulchan HaMoshe? And according to Rabbi, we learned the Shulchan HaMoshe and the other ones are on the sides. But according to Rav Shimon, that there's one line. Where is the Shulchan HaMoshe? 10 Shulchanos of Shlomo take up the 20 Amos. But now you still have the Shulchan HaMoshe Rabbeinu that needs to be placed somewhere. Says the Gemara, responds, Ulataymeich. According to your reasoning, shooting back at Rebbe, where did it stand? Meaning, we said, the Gemara previously pointed out, it's on either side, but you also don't have any room left, because you still have 10 and 20 amos, each being 2 amma long. Ella, rather, says the Gemara, we have to change course. Mi savris chadara have trey dare ninu. Says the Gemara, 1 second. This whole question was assuming what? Was assuming that all the Shulchanais were in one line. Says the Gemara, who told you they were in one line? They were in 2 lines. And now if they're in 2 lines, we don't have any more kashas. As we turn over to Sadik Tes Amid Aleph, today's daf, you already see in the top Rashi, which this is really going back on Amid Aleph. You see how Rashi says that 1 second, I'm a little confused where these Rashis are going on. Uno momento, where's that number 1 over here? I know the Surah Daf is a little bit different. Surah Daf is a little bit different. Okay, says the Gemara. Okay, we'll point out the pictures in a moment. Point out the pictures in one moment. Bishlama. The pictures are really going. Let me explain. The pictures are showing us the terrace that we just said. That's why I said they're going back in Amud Aleph. Why? Because the pictures are showing you that there are two rows. But the kasha, but as we're about to see in a moment, they're going on the next Gemara that's going to tell us the direction that they are. Says the Gemara on the top line. So Bishlam, according to Rabbi Lamanda, no. Bishlam, Rabbi Shimon, Shapir. Then it works that they fit. As Rashi points out, Dafikav Deloy Efsher, he mixes Menachos b'Daraim, the Efsher l'Samseim, Shulchan Shel Eser Amois, Beser Amois, if you lachi, the might Tafi, Tevach Lo Yave Lo Chashav, that little bit that's going to stick out. We're now worried. So according to Vlazber of Shimon, that what? It goes Safain Vidarim, as you see in picture number 2 over here. It goes Safar Vidarim. It's going to fit. Elaman Damar Mizachumayrim, according to Rabbi Mechdi. Let's try to figure this out. Shulchan Kamamashach Menachos. How far is the Shulchan set back from the northern wall? 2.5 amos. V'amodidei, and its own amma. Ushte amos umechsa, and 2.5 amos. Tebeni beni, 2.5 amos between the first row and the second row of Shulchan Aruch. V'amo ushte amos umechsa. Tebeni ubeni, and the amma of the table of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ushte amos umechsa tebeni beni, and another 2.5 amos. V'amodidei, ishtekach dekach al Shulchan. So if this is the way that it's going, as you see in the top right corner of your screen, as you see Rashi's picture, if you have one row, you have to have 2.5 amos a row, then an amma and a half Moshe Rabbeinu, another amma and a half, an amma row of the Shulchan Aruch, and 2.5 amos. It's going to come out that they protrude into the southern part of the Mishkan, of the Kodesh, which is not allowed. Responds the Gemara, Misavris, according to Rabbi Shachar Moshe Badayu Avi Yasvi, who told you that Moshe's Shulchan is sitting in between the two, and therefore it takes up its own 2.5 amos? Says the Gemara, they raised it up and they put it between the two rows. And they brought down the other tables a little bit. Kitalmid hayoshev lefnei rabbi, like a Talmud sitting in front of his Rebbe. So in truth, over here, Rashi already does an incredible job. If you see Rashi towards the bottom right corner of your screen, Rashi already does an incredible job in portraying exactly exactly what the Gemara means. Kitalmid hayoshev lefnei rabbi, as you see in the words of Rashi, that you have. Let's just zoom in on that Rashi for one moment. There you go. As you see in the words of Rashi, that you have that one shulchan protruding out a little bit, and what you gain over here is you don't need to have the whole space of a whole row of shulchanes in between. But now let's pull up ArtScroll over here. Gives us a picture which is going to help us understand this ganze sugya. So let's just start. You see how it breaks up north-south, and it breaks up the Mishkan, the Kodesh HaKodashim. Here we go. So this whole area, first of all, is your Kodesh. That's what you see, the top part of it. That's where the Shulchanes are. And that's why you see the midway line between north and south, and the midway line between east and west. So that midway line between north and south is the area that we're zoning in on, that we want to make sure that the Shulchanes don't go into the Daroim. But now, with that, you could see that if Moshe Rabbeinu's Shulchan is not needing to be its own area, but it can protrude outward, Rabbi, then you're going to save that space. And once that space is saved, what you gain is, and I lost my mouse, there it is. What you gain is that as we'll read the words of Rashi right now. 1 second. Let's just move this over so we can see Rashi. Let's just get rid of the picture. Rashi says, "To Moshe ba'adayu aviyasvi," says Rashi, "Be'emsa mamish didiboi shtei amois hafroshes shel shtei amois umechsa," and that's what we're going to gain over here. We're going to gain that it's not going to be like the previous picture, which again, let's go back over there, the top right corner, that's going to require more space. Tanu Rabbanon, says the Gemara, Asar Shulchan Isasa Shleimai, V'lo Yavim Misadrin Elo Al Moshe. Says the Gemara, let's learn a little bit more about the Shulchan Isasa Shleimai HaMelech. There were 10 of them that he made, and the Kehanim arranged them on the Shulchan of Moshe, El Al Shulchan Moshe. What does that mean? It means they arranged the Lechem upon him. The Lechem Apanim was only on the Shulchan of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shenemar v'sa Shulchan asher alav Lechem Apanim Zav. That the Shulchan that was on Lechem Apanim was gold, and that is in singular. As HaShulchan, the one Shulchan that Lechem Apanim was on, was made out of gold, teaching us that it was precisely and only the Shulchan of Moshe Rabbeinu. Eser Zav. Eser Menachos Asa Shleimai, continues the Gemara, the 10 Menachos Asa Shleimai Melch V'lei Malikin El V'shal Moshe. So a fascinating detail, which I'm sure, if we went from yesterday's daf to today's daf, and if you were to stop anyone, and you say to them 1 second, Moshe Rabbeinu had 1, Shlomo had 10, Moshe had 1, Shlomo had 10, so they would say, oh wow, that sounds fascinating. So what, they had to make lechem upon him 120? So they had to light 10 menorahs every day? That's what you would have thought. But now, says the Gemara, absolutely not. We have a klar brisa that teaches us that Moshe's was the only one that was lit, the only one that the lechem upon him went on. Shenemar es menorahs azov in eroiseo liva erba erev. And the menorah azov and the candles light in the evening, again, we see it in the singular form. So the Tanakama says a fascinating detail. Says the Gemara, so it just comes out that the other Shulchanis have menorahs, where I guess were more for adornments, as we're going to see. Rav Elazar ben Shamua comes along and says, no, al kula mayim esadrin, yes, there are 120 lechem abanim. Shenemar es ha-shulchanois, v'aleihem lechem abanim. Ubekula nayim alikan, and yes, they lit 11 menorahs. Shenemar es ha-menorahs v'neiros eyem leva'aram kimishvat Lifnei Advir Zav Sa Gur. So again, both in the plural. So now the obvious kasha. What does Rav Elazar ben Shamua do with the pasuk of the Tanakama? What does the Tanakama do with the pasuk of Rav Elazar ben Shamua? So it begins the Gemara with the Tanakama. Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda Imer Loyim Esadrin Elal Shel Moshe. Says Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, they arranged the lechem upon him only on Moshe Rabbeinu. Elamani Mekayim, he comes along and he asks and he explains for the Tanakama, what do I do with the pasuk v'sashulchanos asher aleim lechem upon him zov? Says the Gemara, Elu, you know what this refers to? Shloisha shulchanoi shahaya b'mikdash. As those who learn Talmud, and maybe others know, that there wasn't only one shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash. Avada, there was one shulchan with the lechem upon him stacked in. But there were other tables. There were 3 tables in the Beis Hamikdash. Now what? Shnayim, 2 of them, shaya b'ulam mibifnim lebesach, inside the door, Abayis. Echad shel kesef, echad shel zav. So we have 2 tables. One of them is golden and one of them is silver. I don't know if we're going to get to the 3rd table, which was of marble. Let's wait 1 moment. Says the Gemara, 1 of gold and 1 of silver. Al shal kesef noisin lechem abanim b'knisasai. As they're walking in, they put the lechem abanim on the silver table. Al shal zav, they put it on b'yitziyasa when they're coming out. Why? Shemalim bekodesh v'loy meiridim. 1, you want to go up and not down. Excuse me, I said marble. I messed up. That was referring to the tables that they washed the karbanos. That referring to the tables only right at the entrance, and one more echad shel zav bifnim shalav lechem apanim tamid. That one is the shulchan that the lechem apanim was on. So how many shulchanis were there? Well, there were many. There were 3 with regard to the lechem apanim. Silver on the way in, then gold, and then finally the actual shulchan that they went on. Now, of course, there were other tables that they dealt with the karbanos, as they mentioned, marble and silver, etc. And now we know that Moshe Melech had another 10 as well. So says the Gemara. So now we know that when the pasuk says shulchanos, which according to Rav Shemua meant that there were lechem apanim on all the tables of Shlomo Melech. According to the Tanakama, explains Rav Yehuda. No, it refers to the shulchanos, the silver and golden tables that they're placed on the way in. Now, once we mentioned Mailim Mekayder, says the Gemara Manol and Dain Myridin, how do you know that you can't go gold to silver? You have to go silver to gold. Amar Rabbi, Amar Kravi, Akamoishes Amishkan, Vitin is Adina, Vyesem is Krasha, Vitin is Bericha, Vyakum is Amudav. That Moshe Rabbeinu did everything. So we see that you can't go down in Kedusha, that once Moshe started, he had to continue. And how do we know? Demal. And therefore, there you know, you're just in my reading. And we had this in the Gemara Megillah. How do you know that you're also mal and you go up on Rachbar Yaakov Damar Kra? Samachto Isachatoyim Aila ben Avshaisa Vaso Asam Rikuye Pachem Sipuye La Mizbeach Ki Ikrivam Lifnei Hashem Vayikadshu. And they got Kedusha V'Yilois L'Bnei Yisrael. Says the Gemara, startling Mekar, for those who don't know, Kairach's rebellion ended with Kairach being swallowed. But the fire bands that Kairach used were taken, and they were built onto the Mizbeach. Betchila, originally they were Betash Mishe Mizbeach, they were used to serve. But Basoif Achshav becomes Gufa Shal Mizbeach, showing us Malin, we elevate Ba Kodesh. Continues the Gemara, similarly says the Pasuk Asher Shibarta, 5 lines from the bottom, Samtam Ba'aroin, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the broken Luchas go in the Aron, Tani Rav Yosef Melamich HaLuchas V'Shivrei Luchas Menachem Ba'aroin, Mikan, the Tamachacham Sheshachat Amudai Machmas Einzai Sheinoigin Bai Minag V'Zayin. Says the Gemara that a Talmud Chacham, that the broken pieces, first of all, we see still get Kedusha. We see Ein Moy Reading. And number 2, we see a Talmud Chacham, even if he forgot his Torah for whatever its reason, Avada, we still have to give him Kavod. Says the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish. Now, we go into 3 dinim, 3 memories, I should say, of Reish Lakish. Amar Reish Lakish. Pamim, there are times as we turn over Tamid Beis, that the stopping of Torah, that is the Yisai, that's the establishment. Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Luchais, and that is what allowed Klal Yisrael and ultimately Torah to endure. So we see that to be the Bittul is the Yisai. Number 2, a Talmud Chacham that didn't have Eira when I'm Mevazin publicly, as the Pasuk says, and from here we learn out, Kasehu Laila, allow the darkness to cover him over, don't embarrass him. Number 3, a difficult memory of Reish Lakish, Oiver Bilav. You forget one thing. It's an Isser Daraisa, the Zichru Chaver really thrive at this, ensuring that they don't forget anything, ensuring that they're always remembering their learning. Shnamar Yishamar L'cha V'Shmar Nafshecha Me'oid Pentishchas Avarim Muchtar Rav Avin Amar Rav Damar Rav Avin Amar Rav Kol Mak Yishamar Pen Va'al in Eloisa say these are Yisura Daraisa. You cannot forget your learning. Ravina Amar, something else you learn out from the pasuk Yishamar Pen. Shnei Lavinin is going to be 2. Ranachbar Yitzchak Amar, V'shloisha Lavin, it's 3 Lavin, one is Evisham Yishamar L'cha, Ushmar Nafshecha Me'oid, Petishch Zavarim, that 3 Lavin if you forget your Torah. Says the Gemara, Yachla Afilu Machmas Eintzei, so maybe even if it was an Einus, you did everything in your power not to forget the Torah. But then, Ba'ines, whatever which reason, one forgot it, maybe he was not well, Or important Rashi and Bracha says maybe because the Parnasa is busy working, can't remember anything. So if you didn't do anything wrong, you just forgot it, you did everything in your power, but it wasn't an active forgetting, then you're not over in the lavra of the stoiv. I would think even if he forgot why the learning overwhelmed him, I would think maybe he just pushed it if he couldn't put it all in his brain. Maybe he still is over this lav. Tamalaymer rak. Only, meaning it's an exclusion that only if you could have done something different. Rabbi Yochanan Taira ninda barbaim unishama noitzer barbaim. The Torah was given him 40 days, and the Neshama was created in 40 days. Kol mashamer terasai nishmasai mishtameres. You guard the Torah. Your Neshama is guarded. V'chol sheni mishamer es Torah ein nishmasai mishtameres. Tell me there, Yishmael. Mashal Adam Shemaser Sipar Durar Lavdoi. To Mashal, that one gives a bird to his servant to watch. Amar. And he says, give him Damata Shemata Mavdoi. You imagine that if you cause it to be lost, then I'm going to make you pay back. Similarly, if you don't safeguard that which Hashem gave us, then Hashem takes it back. That's the mashal that if one remembers his Torah, his neshama is guarded. If one does not, then Rahman al-Islan, his neshama could be at jeopardy. Continues the Gemara at the Mishnah, halfway down, Sadik Tasim Abayz, as we continue discussing the Lechem Abonim, says the Mishnah. Shnei Shulchanos Hayabulam, there are two tables, Mi Bifnim Al Bez Chabayis. Inside, next to the doorway of the Beis Hamikdash, Achad Shel Shayish, V'Achad Shel Zav. This is the marble table that we referenced. Al Shel Shayish. So we had a memorandum that we'll see in a moment, which is silver than gold. Says the Mishnah was marble than gold. Why? And there's a third one of Lechem Abanim, that the breads are always on. Varbam kanim nechlasim, 4 kayanim enter. Shnayim biyadim shnei sadarim, 2 of them are holding the 2 rows, 6 apiece. Shnayim biyadim shnei bazichan, the 2 spoonfuls of levaina. Varbam akdim levneihem, there's 4 other kayanim that come in for them. Shnayim litel shnei sadarim, 2 to take the 2 rows. Shnayim litel shnei bazichem, 2 to take the old 2 spoons of levaina. Ha machnisim aim de besafa nebneim ledaraim, standing in the north, facing the south. That's fine, the opposite. So we have a simultaneous removal and replacing. One pulls the bread out, and the other ones are putting in the new breads. And the tefach of this one is tefach of that one. Literally, the 2 are moving out one with the other. You always need to have the lechem upon him, never a moment that it is not there. Rav Yasi says Rav Yasi, no. Even if the first group removes and the second group places on the bread, that's fine. That's called tamid. Yatsu, they go out v'nasnum al shulchan hazav. They put it down on the golden table. Shayabula hektiru v'abazichan. They take the 2 spoonfuls of levina, they put it on the mizbeach. They break and they divide the chalois amongst the kohanim. Chal yom hakaypurim liyos b'Shabbos, achal b'chalkos la'erev, erev yom kippur. Chal yos b'erev Shabbos, shir shal yom hakaypurim nechal erev, v'avabliyam oichlin haisam. And the Babylonians would eat ikshuchayim, and they shadaitin yafeh, because their das is not so straight. They would not make sure that it was cooked, which we will see more about this in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Tani, we learned in a Bryce, Rabbi Yossi, Aimer teaches Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah, Afilu Silek. Again, Rabbi Yossi said that Tamid doesn't have to be mamish moment for moment. You can take off the first group and put on the second group. So Tani Rabbi Yossi Amar Filusi Legasi Yishana Shachris. Even if you take all the old ones in the morning, this either is a Chadash Arvis, and you put on the new ones in the evening. Aim Beklach Lo Melmani Mekem Lefani Tamish Lo Yolin. That what? There should never be a nighttime without the bread. Shliyolin Shochan Beloy Lechem. Amar Rav Ami, midvar Rav Yossi Nelman, from the words of Rav Yossi I learned. Afilu lo shana adam el perek echad shachos perek echad arvis ki mitzvahs lo yomash sefer Torah azem ipicha. Even if you learn one thing in the morning, one thing at night, that's a kiyam of not letting the Torah leave your lips for a moment. Rav Yechim Shem Ashbi. Afilu lo kara adam el kriya shema shachos arvis kiyam lo yomash you mekayim lo yomash Torah, because again that's constant morning and night. But there's the aslam of the amaris, but don't tell the amaratzim this. We want them to at least try to learn. Rava Amar argues Rava on the first white line, mitzvah, la'imrav of the Amars. No, tell the Amaratim, it's good to know. They should know that they can also be Mekayim. Shal ben Dama Menachos Shel Rabbi Yishmael Ben Dama, the son of Rabbi Yishmael's sister, asked Rabbi Yishmael, I learned the entirety of Torah. Am I allowed to learn Greek? Karla Mikrazei called him this pasuk. Go find the day. So if you find the time that's neither night or day, then meaning you cannot learn anything else. Even if you know all of Torah, you have to keep on learning again and again. But this is in deference, as argued by Pasuk Zeh. This pasuk loy chayvav loy mitzvah ella bracha. It's not an obligation. It's not a mitzvah. It's a blessing. Hashem saw the Yeshua love the Torah so much. Yeshua didn't leave the tent for a moment. You love the Torah so much, the Sefer Torah is not going to leave your mouth, but it's not an obligation to learn Yom V'Leila. And he would argue and say that indeed you could potentially have a time to learn Chachmas Yavanis. Divrei Torah should not be an obligation. You can't pay up your obligation of Torah. You can't pater yourself from them. What is the meaning of the pasuk? He's enticed you with a narrow entrance and a broad place without anything pushing at the bottom. 2 lines at the bottom. You entice your person from the ways of life. Hashem doesn't want us to go to Gehenim. That it's smoke. Shashanu tzibah, the smoke will gather b'teicha inside of it. V'shema taimar shem shapi atzar kach kul atzar. Maybe you'll tell me the entirety of it is narrow. Maybe Gehenim is not that big. Talmud loymar. As we turn over to Kof Amud Aleph, Hemik Harchiv, says the pasuk, it's deep and it's wide. Maybe it's not prepared for the Torah. Not prepared for the king, for which refers to a Talmid Chacham that left Torah Rachman al-Etzlan. Talmud Laimar says the pasuk Ami Lamelech Ucham Shematayim Ba'etzin, there's no wood in it. Talmud Laimar Medu Rasa Ish V'Eitim Harbe. V'Shematayim, maybe you'll tell me Zeiz Chara. Maybe this is the reward. Talmud Laimar Menachos Shulchanim Mali Deshen. Your table will be with rich foods in the Olam Haba, in the world to come. That we'll see. So first of all, just to point out that you might think that if a Talmid Chacham abandons the Torah, he doesn't go to Gehenim. The pasuk tells us that he does. But Lemaisa, says the Gemara, maybe you'll tell me, V'Shema Taimer, the last kasha, Zui Schara. Maybe this will be his reward that what? That Talmid Chacham will be saved from Gehenim, but he won't get any other reward. Meaning maybe the ganze reward of Torah is not to go to Gehenim. Says the Gemara, no. The reward is grace of Adav and Achad Shulchanim Alideshen. Pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.